श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद्भगवद्गीता साधका संजीवनी 9th chapter, the most confidential knowledge, verses 26 to 34. Offering of objects and actions to God, the fruit of this offering, description of those who are eligible for devotion and description of devotion. An idea may come to the mind of the people that when access even to the minor gods is not easy, access to the Lord should be very difficult. The Lord clarifies the point. Verse 26. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tad aham bhaktya upahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. Whoever offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or even water, I accept the pious offering offered by him with love. Comment. The devotee who offers with love a leaf, basil leaf, etc., a flower, a fruit, or even water, the Lord appears in person and eats that article offered by him with love. The Lord satisfied the three worlds by demanding a leaf from Draupadi and by eating it. He liberated the elephant who offered him a flower. He relished the dried fruit offered by Shabri, so much that he could never forget it and always praised her hospitality. When Ranti Deva offered water to the Lord, who came as a person of the low caste, he had his vision. When a devotee is absorbed in devotion, he forgets what he is offering to the Lord. Similarly, the Lord is also so much lost in love that he takes no heed of what he is eating. The Lord ate the rind of the bananas offered by Vidura's wife with love. The Lord not only accepts the offering of the devotees but also eats it, as a flower is to be smelt. But the Lord eats it because it is offered by a devotee with love. It means that if a devotee wants to offer food to the Lord, he immediately feels hungry. An important fact. In this verse, there is significance of devotion, love, rather than of objects, as the Lord has a thirst for loving sentiment, not for objects. As a chaste wife and an obedient disciple feel highly delighted by serving the husband and the preceptor respectively, a devotee is very much delighted by offering a thing to the Lord because he feels that the Lord by his special grace has given him an opportunity to serve him with the thing which is actually his. The Lord eats the thing offered with devotion. There is an anecdote in this connection. There was a priest who offered almonds, walnuts, cashew nuts, and nuts, etc. to the Lord in the temple from the Diwali festival to the Holi festival. But when these nuts became costly, he began to offer ground nuts. One day the priest had a vision of the Lord in his dream. The Lord said, "My dear, you have started to offer only groundnuts." The priest again started to offer almond, etc. The priest was convinced that the Lord ate the things offered to him. It is said by saints that the things offered to the Lord with devotion become uncommon in smell and taste, etc., and they are not spoiled with the passage of time. This is not a hard and fast rule, but it depends upon the devotion of the devotee. When articles are offered as an oblation into fire, it is sacrifice. When they are offered to others, it is called charity. When by abstinence, they are not used for one's own self, it becomes austerity. And when they are offered to God, it leads to union with Him. All these are different names of renunciation. A man has a downfall if he is attached either to things or actions. In the previous verse, it was mentioned that the things should be offered to the Lord. In the next verse, he explains that the actions should also be offered to the Lord. Verse 27. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi yajhosi dadasi yat tapasyasi kantya tat kurshva mad arpanam. O son of Kunti, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer in sacrifice, whatever you bestow as a gift, whatever you do by way of penance, offer it all to me. Comment. Yat karoshi. This expression includes all scriptural, physical, practical, social, spiritual, and mundane actions. Lord Krishna orders Arjuna to offer all actions to him. If he offers himself to him, all his actions will be spontaneously offered to him. Now Lord Krishna divides those actions into different parts. Yad Ashnasi. This expression includes all the physical actions as taking meals, drinking water, taking medicines, wearing clothes, walking, sleeping, waking, bathing, etc. Yajuhoshi. This expression includes all the sacrificial actions such as arrangement of material for sacrifice, burning fire, chanting sacred formulas, and offering oblation to the sacred fire. Dadasi Yat. This expression includes gift, presents, and help he offers to others. Yat Tapsyasi. It includes all actions that a devotee performs by way of penance, such as control over sense organs, discharging duty, facing the unfavorable and favorable circumstances happily, pilgrimage, fasting, adoration, meditation, loud chanting, and trance, etc. It means that by offering every action to the Lord, the devotee becomes free from the feeling of I-ness and mine-ness, which binds him, and he attains perfection, having attained which he does not reckon any other gain greater than that, and established in which he is not moved even by great sorrow, and which is free from the contact of pain. An important fact. There is nothing new whether an article or action should be offered to God, but a devotee should offer himself to God. By doing so, all his actions will be automatically offered to the Lord. As a mother is pleased with different actions such as jumping, running, playing, smiling, etc. of a child, the Lord is pleased with the different actions of a devotee because he becomes his. But it does not mean that forbidden actions are to be offered to the Lord. The Lord is offered only the things and actions that are sanctioned by the scriptures. As a thing which suits a saint is given to him, the thing or action which suits the Lord is offered to him. Now, if anyone offers forbidden actions such as theft, etc. to the Lord, according to the ordinance, he will get its manifold fruit. That is, he will be severely punished. In the next verse, the Lord describes the good that accrues from offering everything and every action to him. Verse 28. शुभा शुभा फलैर एवं मोक्ष्य से कर्मा बंधनः संन्यासा योग युक्तात्मा विमुक्तो माम उपैष्यसि. With your mind firmly set in the yoga of renunciation, that is by offering all actions to me, you will be free from the bondage of actions yielding good and bad results, and freed from them you shall attain me. Comment. All his actions are performed in accordance with the ordinance of the scriptures and saints. But by chance, if a forbidden action is performed by him, the Lord who is installed in his heart destroys it. A devotee should offer all his actions to God. Here, sannyasa does not stand for the discipline of knowledge. Here it means surrender to God. As a Sankhya yogi rests happily in the self or in God, mentally relegating all actions to the body with 9 holes. A devotee offers all his actions of innumerable births and their fruits to God. What is the bondage of good and evil actions? Every action, whether good or evil, has a beginning and an end. Similarly, there is connection and disconnection of circumstances as the fruit of actions. It means that if an action and its fruit are transitory, how can affinity with them be lasting? But when he, the eternal self, assumes his affinity with actions, he is connected with their fruits. Though his affinity with actions and their fruits is not possible, yet he assumes this affinity. He, self, is eternal. So, his assumed affinity which he accepts in himself also appears to be eternal. He feels happy when good actions bear fruit in the form of favorable circumstances. But this happiness does not persist for a long time. So, he has a desire for happiness. This desire is the root of sadness. Before happiness, there was sadness, and again it will end in sadness. It means that so long as he has a desire for happiness, he can't escape sadness. When he surrenders himself to God, he realizes his real identity with God because he is a portion of the Lord and his assumed affinity with the body perishes. Actually, he already had his identity with God, but he did not realize it because he performed actions with a selfish motive. But when he offers actions as well as himself to God, he attains his love naturally. In that state, he feels the Lord's grace in both the favorable and unfavorable circumstances. As a kind mother shows her kindness in rearing as well as in scolding a child, so does the Lord by sending the favorable and unfavorable circumstances. Shower His grace on devotees. A devotee, without paying any heed to the favorable and unfavorable circumstances, meditates only on God. Now a doubt arises that the Lord frees those from the bondage who surrender themselves to Him. It means that He does not free others, and so He is not gracious and equanimous to all. The Lord clarifies the point. Verse 29. Samo aham sarvabhuteshu name dvesho asti na priyaha ye bhajanti tum mam bhaktya mai te teshu chapi aham. I am the same to all beings. To me there is none hateful, none dear. But those who worship me with devotion are in me and I am also in them. Comment. Those who worship the Lord with devotion without having any attachment for the world and work to please Him are in Him and He is in them. It does not mean that other beings are not in Him, but it means that they don't accept this fact. They think that they are worldly, which are transitory, and so they remain established in the world and the body, which are transitory. But those who regard the Lord as pervading everywhere, all the time, all things, incidents, circumstances, and beings are specially in Him, and He is specially in them. Secondly, those who have this affinity that they are the Lord's and He is theirs, they become so much intimate that they become one. So they are in Him and He is in them. Thirdly, their I-ness comes to an end, so they dwell in Him. Now a question arises that it means the Lord is not the same for all beings. He loves His devotees more than He loves other beings. So He is not just. The answer is that the Lord has declared, howsoever men approach me, even so do I seek them. Therefore, though the Lord is the same and just for all beings, yet it is devotion of devotees which attracts the Lord towards them. If He is not attracted towards them, it means that He is ungrateful and unjust. As a son is called worthy or unworthy because of his virtuous and evil actions, as a louse like insect sucks blood instead of milk from the udders of a cow, and as with the same electricity in a refrigerator, water is frozen to ice while in a heater fire is burnt because of their characteristics. Similarly, different persons because of their different characteristics have different grasping capacity to receive His grace. As a good conductor of heat or electricity conducts heat or electricity, but some other substances don't conduct at all. The defect does not lie with the source of energy, but it is the defect of the instrument. Similarly, God's grace or His sameness is equal to all, but the evildoers, because of their ignorance, don't realize His grace and sameness. The Lord's grace manifests itself among His devotees according to their devotion, while it is not revealed among those who have no devotion and who are non-believers. It means that men, because of their worldly attachment, think that they are worldly, If they start worshipping the Lord, their attachment is wiped out and they start feeling that they are in God and God is in them. Actually, they are ever in God and God is ever in them, but the reality is veiled by attachment. Now, in the next verse, the Lord expounds the greatness of devotion and devotees. Verse 30. Api chet suduracharo भजते माम अनन्या भाग साधुर एव सामंतवहा सम्यक व्यवसितो hi saha. Even if the vilest sinner worships me with exclusive devotion, he should be considered a saint, for he has rightly resolved. Comment. If a multimillionaire says that he will help anyone, even his enemy, with money, his charity will be testified when he actually helps the man who is his enemy. To prove the veracity of his statement, here the Lord first mentions the vilest sinner. Even the sinners of the most sinful conduct, by worshipping the Lord with exclusive devotion, attain salvation. Even at present, sins may be committed sometimes by them because of their past influences, but they are firmly determined with exclusive devotion to attain the Lord. Now, they don't aim at riches, honor, respect, happiness, and comforts, etc. Their only aim is exclusive devotion. Now, a question arises: how the vilest sinner can worship the Lord? The answer is that there can be several reasons. First, when in adversity he gets no worldly support from any quarter, he surrenders himself to the Lord. Second, the atmosphere and the company of saints converts him. Third, any past virtuous influence may be aroused somehow or the other, as was aroused in Valmiki, Ajamila, and Sadhana the butcher, etc., who were converted into devotees though they were sinners. Fourth, if a person escapes some mortal danger somehow or the other, he may start believing in the Lord's singular power. Fifth, by beholding the saints and by the grace of the saints like Valmiki and Ajamila, he may start worshipping the Lord. Several thieves, robbers, murderers, and other vilest sinners became devout devotees of the Lord. Now a doubt arises: how the vilest sinner can worship the Lord continuously when even the devotees who have been engaged in the worship of God for several years can't worship continuously. Here, importance has been attached to exclusive and undivided devotion rather than continuous devotion. As a chaste wife has her relationship only with her husband, that sinner has his affinity only with God. A person can have exclusive devotion by admitting his relationship with the Lord, that is, by changing his egoism. He should admit that he is the Lord's and the Lord is his. He is more purified by changing his egoism than by performing actions such as sacrifice, charity, penance, and chanting the name, etc. There are three factors in connection with the changing egoism. First, to root it out. A devotee following the discipline of knowledge realizes that his self is different from egoism, and so he remains established in the self. Thus, his ego is rooted out. Second, to purify it. By following the discipline of action, a devotee discharges his duty for others without executing any fruit for his duty. For example, a son should discharge his duty towards his father without bothering whether the father treats him as a son or not, whether he troubles him. He should discharge his duty under all circumstances without laying any claim on him. He should not expect his father to be favorable to him. He should cherish no desire for his own comfort or gain. Thus, having no desire of his own, his egoism is purified. Third, to change it. In the discipline of devotion, ego is changed. For example, a chaste wife, by changing her ego, becomes only of her husband. She regards her husband's house as hers, his gotra as hers, and she does not regard her relation with parents, in-laws, and children. but she does serve all of them for the sake of her husband. Similarly, the ego of a devotee changes by following the discipline of devotion, just like a chaste wife who becomes only her husband's. Thus, he changes his egoism. He should be considered a saint. This is the Lord's special behest. Though he does not possess all the virtues of a saint, yet he should be regarded as a saint because he has admitted that he is only God's and only God is his. Thus, by changing his egoism, he will become a saint in no time. Now the question arises why the Lord has to say that he should be considered a saint. The answer is that generally people judge a man by his actions. Where saintliness is not manifest and some trace of bad conduct is observed, there only it is said that he should be considered a saint. With change of ego, he has accepted himself as God's. Therefore, his feelings and conduct will become pure in no time. So the Lord says that such a person should be considered a saint. A man is a devout devotee, but if any day he is seen with a prostitute, people regard him as immoral, though he may have gone there to reform her. Similarly, a sinner may be regarded religious-minded and virtuous if he is seen by people counting the beads of a rosary on the bank of the Ganges. The worldly people generally view actions of other people, but the Lord, instead of paying heed to their actions, pay attention to their feelings. Whatever is determined by oneself is permanent, while that what is determined by intellect is short-lived, because his intellect can be attracted towards worldly pleasures, etc., when he does not live in the spiritual atmosphere as that of listening to divine discourses or studying the scriptures. As a girl after her marriage changes her egoism and becomes her husband's, and she, even without making any effort, always remembers that she is her husband's. A devotee, after becoming the Lord's once, becomes his forever, because he has rightly resolved. So the Lord says that he should be considered a saint. By doing so, he speedily becomes virtuous. A person may possess evils and sins so long as he has a disinclination for the Lord. But when he has an inclination for the Lord, by having exclusive devotion to him, all his evils and sins are rooted out. In the next verse, the Lord declares the result of right resolution. Verse 31. क्षिप्रं भवति धर्मात्मा शश्वत् शान्तिं निगच्छति कान्त्या प्रतिजानीहि नामे भक्तः प्रणश्यति. Speedily he becomes virtuous and secures lasting peace. O Kantya, you vow for certain that my devotee never falls. Comment. Speedily he becomes virtuous and pure because being a portion of the Lord, he is virtuous, but having his affinity with the world, he became a sinner, which was a transitory phase of his life. As soon as he changes his egoism and becomes God's, his affinity with the world is wiped out and he realizes that he is virtuous because all the evils are the product of attaching importance to the world. But as soon as a striver attaches importance only to God rather than to the world, he becomes virtuous. So long as he has sinful feelings, he can't resolve that he is God's. This is correct, but it doesn't mean that a past sinner can't thus resolve. Being a fragment of God, he is ever sinless, but due to his attachment to the world, sins visit him. In case he starts hating sins and resolves that he has to adore God only, he can be instantly virtuous. In ego, where there is desire for the world, there is inclination to God also. If this inclination to God is strengthened, the desire for the world is wiped out and God realization takes no time. A vital fact. The Lord declares, my devotee never falls. By this declaration, he means to say that when a person has total inclination to God, he has not the least possibility to fall. The reason is that it was his assumed affinity with the body which led him to a fall. When he, having renounced this affinity, has an exclusive inclination to God, how can there be any possibility of his fall? Now a doubt arises that when even the vilest sinner can become virtuous, a virtuous person can also become a vile sinner again. But Lord Krishna declares that a devotee can never fall, that is, he can't become a sinner again. It shows that the Lord is not only just but also gracious. It is His grace which enables a devotee never to fall. Now, in the next verse, the Lord explains the other four kinds of people who deserve devotion to the Lord. Verse 32. Mam hi partha vyapashritya ye api sayuha papa yonyaha स्त्रियो वैश्यास्तथा शूद्रास्ते अपि yanti param gatim. O Partha, women folk, Vaishyas, Shudras, and even those that are born of the womb of sin, such as the Parya, taking refuge in me, attain the Supreme God. Comment. Actually, a man becomes impure by having a disinclination for the Lord, as coal loses its luster and becomes black after leaving fire, and brightens again in the fire. The soul, being a portion of the Lord, becomes impure by losing its luster because of its separation from the Lord. But when it has inclination for the Lord, its impurity is wiped out and it becomes so pure that the Lord makes him soul, the jewel of his crown. When a sinful man possessing the worst conduct, being afflicted, wails and invokes God, God's heart melts and he accepts him as his and loves him without paying attention to his sinful conduct. It proves that the present sins of the person who becomes a devotee are not obstacles to God realization. Then how can the sins of previous birth be obstacle? Because they can bear fruit in the form of birth in low wombs and unfavorable circumstances. Only they can't create an obstacle in adoration to God. By the term woman folk, the Lord means that women of all castes, creeds, colors, classes, countries, etc., by taking refuge in Him, become pure and attain Him. Devahuti, Sabri, Kunti, Draupadi, Vraja's gopis of the past, and Meera, Karmati, Karmabai, Fullibai of the present are the woman devotees. Similarly, Samadhi and Tuladhara among Vaishyas and Vidura, Sanja and Nishada Raja Guha among Shudras are examples of devotees. An exceptional fact. There is no restriction for any being to have an inclination to God because He is an integral part of Him. Moreover, animals, birds, trees and plants etc. can also be included among those because they have no discrimination to move towards Him. But if because of the past influence or any other reason they have an inclination for God, they can become devotees like Gajendra, the elephant, and Jatayu, the bird. Now, in the next verse, Lord Krishna describes the two kinds of persons who are fully qualified to attain Him. Verse 33. Kema punar brahmanaha punya bhakta rajrishyas anityam asukham lokam emam prapya bhajasva mam. What wonder then that the holy Brahmanas and devout royal saints should attain Him. Therefore, having obtained this transient and joyless body, do worship me. Comment. When even the vilest sinners and beings born of the womb of sin, as well as women folk, Vaishyas and Shudras, by taking refuge in Him, attain Him, what wonder then that the holy Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, by taking refuge in Him, should attain Him, that is, they will attain Him certainly. This human birth is the last of all births, because it can destroy all the innumerable future births. A man can be a source of bliss to the Lord Himself by being an ardent devotee. This birth is sacred but is transient. The body may die any moment. So a man should attain salvation as soon as possible. This body is joyless. There is no joy in it. How to worship God is made clear in the next verse. Verse 34. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam eveshyasi yuktvevam atmanam mat prayanaha. Fix your mind on me, be devoted to me, adore me, bow down to me, thus making yourself steadfast in me and entirely depending on me. You will come to me. Comment. The mind is fixed on the person or object that a person loves and likes. So Lord Krishna reminds Arjuna that his affinity with him is eternal because he is his portion. The Lord can't forget this affinity, but Arjuna can forget it. So he exhorts him to fix his mind on him by loving and liking him. The Lord asks devotee to perform all actions such as eating, drinking, sleeping, moving, and his profession, etc., as adoration to him. Howsoever agreeable or disagreeable an incident may happen to a devotee, and he may be aware of it through senses, but to him in reality it is divine grace only. If something very unfavorable happens, the devotee should regard it as a special divine grace, as it is not according to the devotee's own will, but it is according to the Lord's own sweet will. If something favorable happens, in what proportion the devotee's consent is there in its happening? In that proportion, the divine grace is lesser. But in unfavorable incident, the devotee should feel highly blissful, as it is destined purely by God. It means that a devotee should bow down to him and his will. He should remain satisfied and happy in favorable and unfavorable circumstances by regarding them as the Lord's gift, because he is all merciful and is the disinterested friend of all beings. Nothing can happen against his will. A devotee surrenders himself to the Lord without having any desire of his own and always remains satisfied with what the Lord does. And he says to the Lord, "O Lord, in which verse, in what circumstances, whatever actions helplessly I have done to neutralize those actions and make me pure, whatever dispensation you are making, I should accept them with much pleasure because they are conducive to my salvation. Why should I brood over them?" Thus, he thinks that whatever is done by him is for his welfare. Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagavad Vani, Srimad Bhagavad Geeta. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.